full high-retention script? Yahoo, the $125 billion collapse. Imagine building something so dominant, so deeply woven into daily life, that 100 million people couldn't start their day without it. Then imagine watching it dissolve. Not in a single crash, not in one catastrophic moment, but slowly, painfully, decision by decision, until the whole thing sold for less than a used car lot in New Jersey compared to what it was once worth. That's not a hypothetical. That's Yahoo. And the most disturbing part? At every single step, someone was actively trying to save it. Nobody could. This is how the internet's first empire destroyed itself from the inside out. Before we go any further, if you're the kind of person who wants to understand how billion-dollar companies actually rise and fall, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe. We're building something here, and you're exactly who this channel is for. It started with a list, not a business plan, not venture capital, just two bored Stanford grad students in 1994, bookmarking websites they liked and sharing them with friends. Jerry Yang and David Philo called it Jerry and David's Guide to the World Wide Web, possibly the least marketable name in internet history. But people kept coming back. The list kept growing. They renamed it Yahoo, which they later backronymed into yet another hierarchical officious oracle, as if the name needed defending. They incorporated in 1997, went public on NASDAQ in 1996, and then something extraordinary happened that had very little to do with their decisions and everything to do with their timing. The internet was detonating in slow motion, and ordinary people had no idea how to navigate it. Yahoo was the map. It was the directory, the search engine, the email provider, the news source, all under one roof, all free, all waiting for you the second you connected. By 1997, if you wanted to find anything online, you went to Yahoo first. Not Google, not Bing, not anyone else. Yahoo. That kind of early dominance is intoxicating, and it almost always comes with a price. By January 2000, Yahoo was worth $125 billion. Let that sit for a second. A company that had existed for less than a decade, built on a list of website bookmarks, was valued higher than most countries' annual economic output. It had expanded aggressively. Rocket Mail became Yahoo Mail, ClassicGames.com became Yahoo Games, and Yahoo Japan launched as a joint venture that would quietly become one of the smartest long-term plays the company ever made, almost entirely by accident. Yahoo was everywhere. It was the front page of the internet. Advertisers poured money in because where else were they going to go? The eyeballs were all here. The brand was untouchable. Inside those Sunnyvale offices, it must have felt like it could never end. Then the dot-com bubble burst, and Yahoo survived, which sounds like a victory until you realize what survival actually cost them. Because while every other internet company was burning to the ground around them, Yahoo started believing that surviving was the strategy. It wasn't. It was just the beginning of a much slower, much more painful kind of failure. Here's the problem nobody wanted to say out loud in the early 2000s. Yahoo was trying to be everything to everyone, and Google was trying to be one thing perfectly. While Yahoo added features, acquired companies, and expanded into new verticals, Google was obsessively refining search. One algorithm, one box, one mission. Yahoo bought Flickr, genuinely brilliant photo-sharing technology that it then proceeded to underdevelop for a decade. It acquired a 40% stake in a scrappy Chinese e-commerce startup called Alibaba, which would later become one of the most valuable companies in human history. That investment alone would eventually be worth more than Yahoo's entire operating business. The best decision Yahoo ever made was writing a check for someone else's idea. But the core question, what is Yahoo exactly? Never got a clean answer. Was it a search engine? Google was winning that war. A media company? That required original content and editorial identity, neither of which Yahoo had committed to. A A technology platform? Sure, but for what? The company kept pivoting without ever actually landing anywhere. And in business, being almost everything is the same as being almost nothing. February 2008, Microsoft walked in with a check for $44.6 billion and effectively said, "We'll take the whole thing." Yahoo's board looked at that number, $44.6 billion cold cash, and said no. They believed they were worth more. They believed a turnaround was coming. They believed the right strategy, the right CEO, the right quarter was just around the corner. It wasn't. Within 2 years, Yahoo had signed a search partnership with Microsoft anyway, quietly adopting Bing technology to power results across its own platform. Read that again. Yahoo, once the internet's most powerful search engine, was now running on a competitor's technology because it couldn't build something competitive on its own. That partnership wasn't a strategy. It was a white flag dressed up in press release language. And it came after turning down $44.6 billion to avoid exactly this outcome. That decision didn't just cost shareholders money. It revealed something deeper. Yahoo's leadership didn't actually know what Yahoo was worth because they didn't actually know what Yahoo was. And what came next would prove it beyond any reasonable doubt. In 2012, Yahoo made one final swing at relevance. They hired Marissa Mayer, Google veteran, one of the company's earliest and most prominent employees, widely regarded as one of the sharpest product minds in Silicon Valley. She arrived to enormous fanfare. Covers of magazines, breathless profiles. The narrative practically wrote itself. Brilliant insider comes home to rescue a wounded giant. Mayer moved fast. She redesigned products, pivoted hard toward mobile, made dozens of acquisitions, most famously Tumblr, which Yahoo bought for $1.1 billion in 2013, and eventually wrote down to almost nothing. She tried to inject energy into a company that had been running on institutional momentum for years. And to be fair to her, the strategy wasn't wrong. The diagnosis was correct. Mobile was the future. Content mattered. Brand identity mattered. But here's the brutal truth. She was trying to renovate a house that no one could agree was even a house. The foundation wasn't solid. The core business, selling display advertising, was being systematically dismantled by Facebook and Google, who had built targeting capabilities that Yahoo couldn't match. Advertisers weren't choosing Yahoo. Users weren't choosing Yahoo. And no amount of redesigns or acquisitions could change the fundamental reality that the internet had moved on and Yahoo had been left behind. By 2015, the numbers had stopped being polite about any of it.
The Wall Street Journal ran a piece in 2015 with a headline that required no explanation: Yahoo's portal to nowhere. Activist investor Starboard stepped in. Bids started emerging for the core business. Yahoo stock was approaching worst-case scenario territory. Revenue was falling. Display advertising, the lifeblood of everything Mayer had been building, was being captured almost entirely by the Facebook-Google duopoly. In April 2016, Yahoo posted a loss. In July, another loss. The identity crisis that had been simmering since 2001 was now terminal and fully public. The Journal ran a piece asking point blank, what is Yahoo? The answer, it turned out, had finally arrived, and it wasn't pretty. Yahoo was for sale. On July 25, 2016, Verizon agreed to buy Yahoo's core internet business for $4.83 billion. A company that had once commanded $125 billion was selling its soul for less than 4 cents on the original dollar. Everyone assumed that was the bottom of the story. Everyone was wrong. 2 months after the Verizon deal was announced, Yahoo dropped a disclosure that sent shockwaves through the entire tech industry. In September 2016, the company revealed that hackers had broken into its network in late 2014 and stolen personal data belonging to more than 500 million users. Names, email addresses, birth dates, phone numbers, encrypted passwords, security questions. Yahoo blamed state-sponsored actors, specifically Russian government operatives. What it didn't mention was that it had apparently known about the breach for nearly 2 years and said nothing. Nothing to users, nothing to regulators, and nothing, absolutely nothing to Verizon, which was in the middle of finalizing a multi-billion-dollar acquisition of the company. The SEC investigation that followed painted a damning picture. Yahoo had learned about the Russian hack in December 2014. Its public disclosures during those 2 years had claimed the company faced only the risk of future data breaches, without ever acknowledging that one of the largest breaches in history had already happened on their watch. The commission called it misleading. Most observers called it something stronger. And then the final number came out. It wasn't 500 million compromised accounts. The actual figure was 3 billion. Every Yahoo account that had ever existed compromised. All of them. The company that had once been the trusted front door of the internet had been secretly wide open for years while executives collected salaries and negotiated sale prices. Altaba, Yahoo's successor entity, paid a $35 million penalty to the SEC, the first fine of its kind ever imposed on a public company for concealing a data breach. The Verizon deal eventually closed in 2017 at a reduced price of $4.48 billion, a discount essentially for the cover-up.
What followed was less a collapse than a slow institutional dismemberment. Verizon folded Yahoo's assets into a subsidiary called Oath, a name so uninspired it almost felt like commentary, and then renamed it Verizon Media. Neither version worked. In 2021, Verizon sold the whole thing to private equity firm Apollo Global Management for roughly $5 billion. Verizon had spent approximately $9 billion acquiring Yahoo and AOL. It left with about half that. Under Apollo, the exclamation point was dropped. Yahoo Inc. No fanfare, lowercase ambitions. By February 2023, Yahoo had laid off more than 20% of its global workforce. In March 2025, TechCrunch, one of the last valuable media assets in the portfolio, was sold off. Then AOL itself was carved away and sold to an Italian tech company called Bending Spoons for $1.5 billion. Two former giants of the early internet, once bitter rivals for dominance of the web, being liquidated as separate line items by a private equity firm in a transaction that barely made the news. In a Washington courtroom in 2023, Google executive Prabhakar Raghavan was asked about Yahoo's dominance back in 1998. He said he came to work every day trying not to become the next roadkill. Google now controls nearly 90% of global search. That number once belonged to Yahoo. The difference was never really about luck or timing or technology. Google knew exactly what it was. Yahoo spent 20 years trying to answer the same question and ran out of time before it could. Yahoo Finance still loads every morning for millions of people. Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Mail, Yahoo News, still running under Apollo's ownership, still drawing traffic, still trying to find their footing. The company recently acquired an AI news platform and added new voices to its board. It is, quietly and without much fanfare, trying once more to figure out what Yahoo actually is. Some questions are easy to ask and nearly impossible to answer, especially when the clock has already been running for 30 years. A Google executive used Yahoo's name in a courtroom as shorthand for what happens when a dominant company loses its identity. That might be the most accurate definition Yahoo ever received. Not from its own leadership, not from its investors, but from the competitor that replaced it. If this story got you thinking, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We cover the stories behind the biggest rises and falls in business, and we're just getting started.